This is the 28th or 29th of September 2021, and I'm outside Edward House, Key Place, Edward Street, Birmingham, B1 2RA. I'm outside the offices of the UK Legal Ombudsman. The UK Legal Ombudsman. These are a redress service that are supposed to come to the aid of clients of solicitors who have been failed by those solicitors, failed, cheated, mistreated, things like that. I have experienced the services of this legal ombudsman, and I found them to be utterly corrupt, evil, nasty, completely lacking in empathy of people that are suffering, that have already been abused by crooked solicitors. Because the UK, the English solicitor profession, is utterly corrupt. Utterly corrupt. And this fraudulent pretend redress service is a part of the way whoever set it up, linked to government, mocks the victims of these crooked solicitors. It's such a crooked profession. It's such a crooked profession. Crooked, utterly corrupt, utterly crooked, utterly corrupt, utterly crooked, utterly corrupt, utterly crooked, utterly corrupt, utterly crooked, evil profession that is entrenched in the crookedness and the evil for hundreds of years, maybe even thousands of years. This solicitor's profession has been crooked like this, crooked. This profession has thousands of victims in their wake that they have defrauded of thousands of pounds. Criminal behaviour, stealing property. I've heard of wills and probate solicitors that have stolen property from those that they did wills for. Stolen property, embezzled, and then fought tooth and nail the beneficiary when the beneficiary has tried to fight for what they're trying to steal from them. This legal profession, English legal profession, is extremely Masonic. There's a book about Freemasons called The Brotherhood by Stephen Knight, where he says that the Law Society is one of the most Masonic organizations, not even in England, in the world. The Law Society is the English solicitors and barristers club. It's their club. And yet, the government allows the solicitors club, which is them, to regulate themselves. So the government and the royalty fully endorse the corruption and fully enable it. And this legal ombudsman is one of the organisations that they've pretended to set up to as a form of redress. It gives no redress whatsoever, none. It's an absolute fraud, an absolute crooked fraud. The legal ombudsman, utter crooks. I myself have been caused much distress when I went to this legal ombudsman. I've been caused much distress. This is, this is part of the office. I felt the need to go to them because my mother died leaving a will where she named me on paper, on the will, an executor of the will, along with a younger brother, a British transport police officer, and an uncle, one of my mum's brothers, who was living in England at the time. This brother, a so-called British transport police officer, a pillar of society, supposedly. This crook of a brother used fraud and committed perjury with the Manchester High Court of Justice in order to remove, exclude, sideline me as an executor behind my back. He had his hand on my mum's papers. He handed those papers over to a firm called Gedye Sons without my consent, without consulting me, without my knowledge. And he and solicitors from that firm and his sister-in-law, basically committed fraud and perjury to exclude me from involvement in my mother's will without my signature, selling property without my signature, without my consent, without my permission. And the brother was very nasty in the way he did all this. He cut off contact with me, and he got this firm Gedye Sons. I live in London, but this firm Gedye Sons, they're not from anywhere near London. They're from the northwest of Cumbria. So he got them to act in a hostile and nasty way to me. I was invited by one of the solicitor owners of this firm to a meeting room in London because they had some desk space in London. I was abused, threatened, lied to, defrauded, manipulated in that office by a solicitor who's not even from London, and a solicitor who is white and I'm black. How does that look? It looks racist to me. It doesn't only look crooked, fraudulent, evil, unlawful, it also looks racist. He's from an area that is all white. I never met the man before in my life, and I've never seen him since then. And my life has been hell since meeting this man, where he invited me with the purpose of defrauding me and abusing me. So because of this, I needed to go to the legal ombudsman. But from the time I first went there, time I first went there, it was made difficult for me. From the time I first went there, the first contact I had, that it was very negative. I was told, oh, we probably won't find in your favour. You haven't even looked at the case and you're saying that. Why do you invite people to come to you and then the first thing you say, oh, we probably won't find in your favour? That's crookedness and fraudulent right there. Because you're welcoming people, and then when people come to you, you're being the opposite of how you're supposed to be. And the first response I got from the investigator was extremely negative. She wrote me and told me I was out of time to even make a complaint. That's how she responded to me. So from the beginning, she was looking for a way to avoid even dealing with me. That's how they do. That's how other people that I've gone to them have also said. That was my experience. The first thing they do when you go to them, this is the building here. This is the building here. This is Edward Street. The first thing they do is discourage you and put you off. And by the time you come to them, by the time I came to them, I was already deeply troubled, deeply distressed, because I had been suffering at the hands of my brother and these evil solicitors, especially the one that invited me and abused me. I'm not supposed to give his full name on YouTube. It said don't give full names, so I can give his first name, Richard, and he's an owner director. So I was told I was out of time. I was told I was actually out of time. I was told I was out of time. When I wasn't out of time, I contacted them on the day of the deadline. But then the time I called, they happened to close earlier than they're supposed to. So then she used that against me, and I then had to obtain my phone records from my phone operator, send them back to this investigator, and wait for a month in distress and anxiety before they would admit that I wasn't out of time. So they made me suffer for maybe 5 weeks in distress, making me think they're not even going to take my case before they agreed to take it. But then even when they took it, and I jumped through their hoops, I was abused even more down the line when they found an excuse. This investigator, Eleanor Yates, found an excuse to dismiss my case using a fraudulent, crooked scheme rule that the legal ombudsman scheme has. This scheme rule is called Scheme Rule 5.7N. Scheme Rule 5.7N. And this scheme rule, they've deliberately put into their scheme rules so that they can find any excuse to dismiss a complaint they want to get rid of. Because they, in their scheme rules, the legal ombudsman scheme rules, it's called a scheme. And it is a scheme, the legal ombudsman scheme is a scheme in more ways than one. It's the scheme in the way that they've schemed to find ways to get rid of victims of solicitors. Find a way to get rid of them, find a way. Basically, the legal ombudsman is a rubbish bin for them to put complaints into. A rubbish bin for them to put complaints into. You know, let's see. So what was I saying? Yes, this scheme, that there are 14 scheme rules, or sub-scheme rules, that there's 14 reasons in the legal ombudsman scheme rules to for them to dismiss complaints. There's 14 reasons in their scheme rules for them to dismiss complaints. That's when they dismiss without giving a decision, without fully investigating, without. It's as though that you've never been to them because they haven't made a decision. You know, and you may have spent weeks giving them evidence, and at the end of it they dismiss your complaint as though you have never even been to them. You may as well have not been to them. They don't record the decision. They don't even record that they haven't upheld your complaint. So there's 14 reasons in their scheme rules to dismiss complaints. But only 13 of those are valid, concrete reasons. The 14th reason is a very vague catch-all that they use to make up any reason to dismiss your complaint. The 14th reason states that an ombudsman may, but in brackets, but does not have to, dismiss a complaint if, in his or her opinion, and that's key, if in his or her opinion there are other compelling reasons other than the first 13 reasons to dismiss a complaint. So you got the 13 reasons, then you've got a 14th reason that basically if there are other reasons outside the 13 compelling reasons, any reason that's not in there to dismiss the complaint, they can make up any reason outside those first 13 reasons to dismiss the complaint and say it's compelling. Because even if the reason is not compelling, according to this crooked scheme rule, this corrupt scheme rule, which is like a loophole, they can say, an ombudsman or ombudswoman can say, in my opinion, my reason is compelling. Because, so they can just say, my reason is compelling because it's my opinion that it's compelling. What a crook. What corruption. In their opinion. And of course, this legal ombudsman, they are 80% funded by the solicitors who they're supposed to be investigating. 80% funded by the solicitors and barristers. 80%. 80% of the legal ombudsman funding comes from the Law Society, which is the Solicitors and Barristers Club. So it's case over right there. The whole thing is corrupt right there. When they're funded by those they're supposed to be investigating, those they're supposed to be seeking justice on the client's behalf against, have funded them. Utterly corrupt, utterly crooked system. This England is an utterly corrupt country, totally corrupt. And this legal ombudsman is notorious. They are notorious for not finding for the complainant. Notorious, of course. Notorious. They have a review page on trustpilot.com. The legal ombudsman has a review page on trustpilot.com, and there are 158 reviews at my last time of looking. 158 reviews. 96% of those reviews are 1-star reviews. And even some of those that are not 1 star, maybe 2 or 3 stars, you know, and that's just 1 or 2 of them out of that. These people are an evil bunch of people. They should have to face the people they've abused, because none of the people they've abused and turned down has a complaint that's not valid, has not been touched, has not been affected by their encounter with the solicitor. None of them. I ended up feeling worse after my contact with the legal ombudsman than before I even went to them. I ended up feeling terrible, absolutely terrible. I already felt bad enough. And I felt bad when they were going to say that I was out of time for about 5 weeks. And then I felt worse. I felt even worse when they dismissed my case for contrived reasons, abusively, with a letter that was full of lies and abusive, contemptuous towards me, basically acting as a the woman, the ombudswoman that wrote me, Louise Smith. She was an investigator, then they turned her to an ombudswoman. The letter she wrote me was appalling. She may as well have been working for the firm Gedye Sons. She may as well have been working for them, because they committed a massive fraud against me, and the letter that she wrote, she was agreeing with the fraud they committed, as though it was all above board. She was agreeing with the fraud. She was actually agreeing with the fraud they did to me, where they took advantage of me as a vulnerable, inexperienced, unrepresented layman. They took advantage of me. This solicitor took advantage of me. You're not supposed to do that. If I come to you for help and you take advantage of that to basically exclude me as an executor, that I am legally there, and I've come to you for help, that's fraud. You should do prison time for that. You should have to face court for that. And even in the solicitors' rules of the Solicitors Regulation Authority, another utterly corrupt front for solicitors, who are even worse than the legal ombudsman. Even in their rules, their handbook, it says the solicitors should not take advantage of an unrepresented person. They should not take advantage of an unrepresented person. He did that and more. This solicitor, this crook, wills and probate solicitor of Gedye Sons, Cumbria, Grange-over-Sands, who also operate in London, but they should not be allowed to operate in London. They should not be allowed anywhere near London. If he comes from Cumbria to London to abuse and defraud me, he should not be allowed to operate. This man is an evil man who should have been struck off a long time ago. He's an evil man. My experience of him is he's an evil man. So this scheme rule 5.7 says that an ombudsman can dismiss a case even if there's no reason to dismiss the case within the first 13 reasons, if in that ombudsman's opinion there are other compelling reasons to dismiss the case, to dismiss the case. So an ombudsman can just make up a compelling reason or a set of compelling reasons that are not compelling, but just say, in my opinion, my reasons are compelling. There's no checks and balances. They don't have. You can't challenge it. It doesn't go up to a higher ombudsman to check that those reasons are compelling at all. They can just dismiss a case for no good reason, making up reasons using that scheme rule 5.7n. What an utterly corrupt system. an utterly, 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 utterly corrupt, evil system. And after I spent weeks sending evidence, doing homework, sending evidence, when this investigator, Eleanor, she was supposed to write back to me with her preliminary decision. She never said anything about dismissing my case, but instead she wrote to me saying that she has asked the Ombudsman to dismiss my case using this crooked scheme rule. 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 I was shocked and dismayed because by that time I had done some research into this legal ombudsman, and I had learned from other people that had been to them about their experience. And what I read did not make for good reading, And from what I read, whenever someone said that it was time for a decision to be made, and it wasn't a good decision, and they maybe wrote to the Ombudsman to appeal, they always said the Ombudsman agreed with the investigator. The Ombudsman always agreed with the investigator because there's an appeal process which I wasn't allowed to get anywhere near. But they said whenever there was that appeal process, the Ombudsman agreed with the investigator. In my case, it wasn't an appeal so much. It was it wasn't an appeal for a better decision. It was just to write and give them reasons why they should not dismiss my case. But by then, from what I had already learnt, I realised that it didn't matter what I wrote in my so-called appeal. It's not even an appeal because I'm already disadvantaged. I'm basically in a position where I'm trying to beg them not to dismiss my case. But when she said, I'm going to ask the Ombudsman to dismiss your case, I knew that whatever I put, it wasn't going to be taken notice of, and my case was going to be dismissed. I knew that from the time I read this letter from this nasty woman, this investigator, Eleanor. I knew. So it's like adding stress upon distress, stress upon stress, and distress upon distress. It's appalling. And as I knew it would, my case was dismissed. It was dismissed. Even after I sent my appeal, I went into depression even before I went into depression even before I got the results, because I knew what the result would be. I went into depression. These are evil people. They're evil people. And when a letter was sent to me via email, and when I read it, my case was not only dismissed, but it was dismissed by this ombudswoman in, I would say, the nastiest way possible. It was dismissed in the nastiest way possible. I think these people, this Louise Smith and this Eleanor Yates, are racists, especially that Louise Smith. The way she's dismissed my complaint is evil. It's evil. She's not just dismissed it, but she's dismissed it in such a nasty way. She's basically agreed with the frauds that were committed against me, that even the Solicitors Regulation Authority says you're not supposed to treat, a solicitor is not supposed to treat a member of the public like that. Because, don't forget, this solicitor that abused me, I wasn't even his client. He invited me to see him. It was my brother that got him. And then he abused me in the meeting room. He threatened me in the meeting room and lied and abused me and carried out a fraud on me. He even giving me a dodgy statement to sign and pushing me into signing it. You know, pushing me into signing it. Something dodgy and manipulative. So even the Solicitors Regulation Authority says you're not supposed to take advantage of, as a solicitor, of an unrepresented member of the public who's not represented, who's a layman, inexperienced, vulnerable. They're not supposed to take advantage of someone like that. And he did. This man is a crook. He's a criminal. So, she agreed with what he did. She agreed with it. She said, "Oh, you accepted power at reserve and stepped down." That's what she said. She didn't say that he didn't tell me he was going to try to get me to step down using this fraudulent power reserved. And it's fraudulent. He used it fraudulently. Something he used fraudulently. She said, "Oh, you accepted that." She didn't mention that I wrote him 3 weeks later telling him I'm not stepping down. She didn't mention that. She didn't mention that. She didn't mention that even when I did that, they got a grant of probate from the probate registry in my brother's name only, without even informing me. And they lied to the probate registry and the court because they swore an oath that they had informed me. Because on the application form from the probate registry, it says if you're an executor and there are other executors and you're applying a loan, you must inform the other executors in writing. They never did that, but they swore an oath, my brother, the crooked policeman, with the help of the solicitors and his sister-in-law solicitor, this Emily, who was working for Withers, white English, another white English that has done this to me, a black African. They've all done that without telling me, but they've sworn an oath that they did tell me. It's fraud. It's perjury. It's perjury. And this thing they did me, I found out that this is a thing that many solicitors do. Many probate solicitors do this. It's a fraud that they do. It's a fraud that they do to remove an executor. So I got removed from an executor by someone I never even instructed. But never even instructed. I only ever met him once. Never instructed him. He only met me to carry out the fraud on me. I never instructed him. I never consented for him. And this, it's so racist because this, you got this white English. My mum, an African woman, she is the one that made the will. And she made me, her son of an African woman, black African, an executor. And then you have these white English people from the north of England, from an all-white area, because I've been there, coming from nowhere to remove me. It is racist. It's utterly racist. Crookedly. They've caused me infinite pain, infinite suffering. And after my case was dismissed, I went into depression even further than I had been. And about 2 months later, I was diagnosed with type 2 diabetes. 2 months after, this legal ombudsman dismissed my case. These are Eleanor and Louise Smith. I was diagnosed with type 2 diabetes. And I know that had a lot to do with the terrible stress I had been under for months, for maybe a year or more up to that point. And what they did was like the final straw, and I was diagnosed with type 2 diabetes. This is the legal ombudsman that has done this to me. The legal ombudsman that has done that. Diagnosed with type 2 diabetes. And there's more. There's more. Because this Eleanor Yates, my case that she dismissed, she didn't even take all my complaints, because there were more complaints. There were more complaints that I sent them to her at the same time, but she only took about one of those complaints. And when I spoke to her about it, she said, put those other complaints together in one big letter, one big complaint, and send that back to them, back to the solicitor's firm, Gedye Sons, and wait 8 weeks. And if you don't get a response, or if you get a response, come back to us. I didn't need to do that. I did not need to do that, because I had already presented those complaints to them even before I went to her the first time. That's why I put all these complaints together. I didn't need to do that. So she got out of dealing with those complaints by making me send them again. And those complaints were serious complaints. They were strong. They were very strong, stronger than the initial one, because when I sent the initial one, I didn't know the full story. These crooked solicitors did a lot more. They did a lot more, Anyway. So I eventually, and it was a lot of work for me to put all those complaints in one. And I eventually did that, sent it to them. This was probably the next year. This wasn't straight away. And I immediately they bounced those complaints back because I got a letter back, but I knew it was like a rejection letter, and I never even bothered opening it because they're crooks. But when I eventually took these complaints that this investigator said that you send them back to them and then come back to us with their response. When I did that and went back to the legal ombudsman and spoke to one of the call center people, that call center staff who you speak to first was hostile and aggressive towards me and was telling me, your complaints have been dealt with. They've been dealt with and your complaint has been dismissed. I told him that's not the case because this investigator said I should actually do this. She said I should do this, and I recorded the phone call and I've got the recording. He was appalling. He was absolutely appalling. So as soon as, that's what happened with this legal ombudsman. As soon as you go to them, they're hostile. And when I did what I was told to do by that investigator, that's what I got. I got this hostility to the extent that I had to make a complaint about this man. And probably months later, someone contacted me about these complaints, and he was appalling. His name was Cumbria. He was appalling. They're just crooks and appalling, these people. He wouldn't even tell me if he was male or female. But I did research and realised he was male. He was male. But he wouldn't even tell me whether he was male or female. And he was messing me about. And he eventually said that he first tried to get me to relinquish the complaint. He first tried to get me to do that. When I wouldn't do that, he was saying that, it will take me time to have a look at this, and it was weeks and weeks. And then when I refused to just relinquish the complaints, as he was trying to get me to do, he then said, I've had a look at it and I've decided these complaints are the same as the complaint that was dismissed. And when I asked him to give me examples of where one of the new complaints was the same as the complaint that was dismissed, he refused to do so. That shows you he's a liar. This is what they're like at this legal ombudsman. He refused to do so. I asked him to show me where my new complaints were the same as the complaint that was dismissed, and he refused to do so. And he said the only example I'll give you is the original complaint that was dismissed. That is what they're like at this horrific legal ombudsman. They are criminals. They are like con men and crooks, and extremely appalling. I was told by the original investigator, write these complaints in one, send them to them again. So I had to send them to crooked solicitors that were already hostile to me. And then when I did that and went back to them, I got all this crap. I got all this appalling treatment. Appalling. And this legal ombudsman, there are so many complaints about them. I've seen one person contact a victim of the legal ombudsman and tell him that he used to work for the legal ombudsman, and he was wanting to be a whistleblower, and he admitted, he said that he knew for a fact that some solicitors have actually paid some of these investigators or higher up money to drop complaints. He said, as someone that worked there, he knew for a fact that that solicitors pay investigators or ombudsman extra money under the counter to dismiss complaints. That's pure corruption. Pure corruption. It's a totally corrupt setup, this legal ombudsman. Totally corrupt. So this is my, and there's a lot more to my experience of the legal ombudsman and their behaviour than what I'm even saying. But that will be enough for now. So that's it. The legal ombudsman, Edward House, Edward Street, Birmingham, B1 2RA.